Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jacqueline Dorsey of Lean Frontiers and I'll serve as your host today. I'm excited to bring to you a short webinar on lean human resources facilitated by Jean Cunningham. So for now, let me turn things over to Jean.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm going to be talking this morning about workforce development and its linkage with strategic deployment planning because this aspect of workforce development is absolutely critical to really becoming a lean enterprise. Let's see here, see if I can, okay. Hopefully you've seen my screen progress. My background, I was CFO at Lantech and Marshall Doors and wrote about my experiences as a lean leader and our lean transformation from a traditional company to very innovative lean enterprise. And I spend my time now sharing my experiences and helping other people learn, particularly about lean in business management or lean office. So this is kind of the context in which I'm speaking to you today. In my framework of thinking about lean and lean transformation, there are three elements that are really important as part of your lean transformation. Strategic deployment, which is mainly what I'm going to be talking about today, but the other two elements I think are extremely important is managing for daily improvement, creating a culture of continuous improvement in every part of the organization every day, focusing on how do we get better at doing things and empowerment. Obviously there's a lot written and a lot to be said about that topic. I won't be covering that per se today. The other has to do with value stream management and improvement events that are focused on overall processes. These also are very important because by working within an independent department or silo, it's impossible to get at the true deep transformational change required to really transform the organization. So these are the three elements that I feel are extremely important. And as you apply all three of these areas, this is what really creates the value of lean to the organization. Lean is not pixie dust. It's not something that you do because you ought to. Lean is really, in my opinion, the very best way that you can improve the performance of the organization along your strategic and operational requirements. So I do a lot of talking about the financial impact of this and have some models for talking about it. I'm just going to hit on those very briefly today, but basically the idea on the financial side is traditionally, as we forecast and look at sales growth or in some cases for sales decline, but we'll stay on the positive side here in sales growth, there's been a very simplistic approach on the financial side to say, well, as sales grow, so will our cost of an organization grow. And of course, the difference between sales and cost is what we call profit. And so as we've grown, we plan what cost can we afford for the organization and, and try to keep those in alignment. What makes lean thinking from a value creation so much more, this is really where the value of lean comes from, is where we figure out how to shift our cost profile so that as we grow, we don't have to add costs at the same rate. Lean, in my mind, is not a cost reduction effort. It's really about capability creation in the organization. And this is really where workforce development starts to come in, which is as we create capacity in the organization by eliminating waste in the activities that we perform, we create capability and we create time. And that time has to be redeployed toward the work that is really creating value in the organization. The other thing that we can do with lean, and often doesn't talk about nearly enough, is how do we accelerate our growth rate, going out further with sales, but also improving the the profitability contribution of our new sales. So certain costs of an organization vary directly with sales, and that's called contribution margin, and other of the costs that support the performance of the value of the organization. That would be your cost profile. So Lean really allows us to really hit on all of those, make improvement in all of those areas when fully deployed from an enterprise point of view. However, to achieve this, it doesn't happen by just saying, oh, we reduce waste, or we've got a better quality product, etc. We actually have to move around the resources in the company so that the people that we have can focus on the work that it has the highest value to the customers. And this is really where workforce development becomes crucial to reaping the benefit of the Lean efforts that we've done in the company. So what are these keys to unlocking the human capacity in the organization? And there's one theme, and the theme is we have to move people around. We need to promise all of our employees that they will not lose their employment because of improvements within the organization, waste elimination, etc. They must be promised that they will not lose their employment. However, the only way to make that promise is to also ensure that everyone's job is changing. We know for sure it will change as we eliminate waste, but we have to pair that with actually moving people around in the organization so that they can work on things that actually do have value, and that then allows us to make this promise of employment. So the element of that I want to talk about today is really on one of the three prongs, which has to do with strategic deployment planning. Strategic deployment planning is a process that companies use to choose what are the most important focus areas for significant change that will allow you to bend these curves that you saw before and deploy them towards true value for the customer. Now, some of you may be familiar, and if you're not, you'll probably want to learn more about strategic deployment planning. Many of us use what's called the X matrix. Now, looking at this picture, I'm sure you can tell why it's called an X matrix, because there are four sides to strategic deployment planning. In my experience as a CFO, I've been in companies that have been really good at generating ideas about what we ought to do, but we were never that good with deploying or actually taking action to achieve those great ideas. And so as we adopted at both Landtech and Marshville Doors strategic deployment planning, we were able to better marshal our efforts towards the most important things that we needed to do to move between our 3-year strategic goals, which is down at the bottom of the X, towards the current year goals. How far can we get this year towards those goals? And then up above, the strategic initiatives, this is really the key. What are the most important things that we can be working on to close the gap between our 3-year goals and our current goals? And these strategic initiatives are not, we shouldn't be thinking of them as annual initiatives. We should think of this as a rotating set of initiatives that move as quickly as possible on and off the matrix throughout the year so that we can close the gap in the goals. A lot of people, I think, make mistakes. They think, oh, what are our annual initiatives? No, we need to be thinking of these. Some initiatives may take a short time. Some may take multiple years. But these are the things that we've agreed as an organization are the most important things that we can be doing. And on the fourth side of the X are the key milestones or targets that will help us know, are we making progress to those initiatives? Now, how does workforce development connect with this? If we've decided that these are the most important strategic initiatives, we need to think about how do we get initiatives done. The traditional way to do initiatives is to just have some projects with some project managers who do their regular job but also take on these initiatives. And they have team meetings that happen over a period of time. But if these are the most important things we can be doing, I want to encourage us to think about using our workforce differently and committing time and effort to these initiatives, just like we do to Kaizen or improvement events, full-time dedication to these initiatives using the key resources of the organization. So when we think about strategic deployment initiatives, if we have 5 to 7 initiatives at any one time, which I think is a really good sweet spot for most organizations, and organization, what I mean by organization, I'm talking about a business unit, a full company. Depending on the size of the company, it might be a business unit, it might be a legal entity within a larger corporation. This is a subunit of the company, either the full company for smaller companies or a subunit of the company. What we want to do is we want to move people out of their normal job that they do day to day, and we want to move them to that initiative. Maybe it will be for 2 months, 3 months. Maybe it will be for 9 months that they're going to be there on that initiative. And the reason we want to do that is it's going to help the initiative. First of all, the initiative is going to go a lot faster if people are spending full time on the initiative versus, an hour or 2 or a day every month or every week, but this really creates a sense of urgency and pace. However, from an organizational development plan, think about what this does. If I'm pulling someone from, let's say, the purchasing department or the finance department or the engineering department, and I am pulling them full time to be on this initiative, incredible development is going to happen. First of all, the people that are pulled out of their normal job are going to be fully responsible for the initiative, and they are going to learn a lot more than their normal job in doing that initiative. They are really going to be working on the breakthrough ideas of the company. You're going to be pulling your best and brightest people to these initiatives, people that can really get things done. And it shows them that they are important. It emphasizes the value of good contributors in the organization, and it's going to be seen as a reward. And the reason it's going to be seen as a reward is during that period of time, these people are going to grow dramatically. It is just amazing what happens with people when they are pulled up and working on one of the most important things for the company outside of their normal everyday job. So it's huge development of those people. In fact, in my experience, often those people are the ones who are your next leaders, promoting into the next level. These don't have to be, by the way, your existing managers. It can be. But I would encourage you to think of it as not necessarily focusing on the managers, but as the way you do pull people up into your next level of responsibility. But something else really magical happens. What happens to the department that that person is pulled from? They're not backfilled. They're not backfilled by somebody new. The team that exists there has to take on responsibility for that person's job that they've been doing. Now, getting ready for that, certainly Kaizen events in that particular area of the company, say purchasing or human resources or finance or engineering or manufacturing, they're going to have been doing Kaizen improvement events, one of the other 3 elements. So they're creating capacity to allow people to move from the area. But also the people remaining in the area now are having to pick up other responsibilities that some of the key leaders of the organization, the key performers of the organization were doing. And so that drives development back within the home team as they pick up those roles. So this is an incredibly powerful opportunity for people to learn, not just in some sort of academic sense, but truly on the job and understanding the work. It's a natural form of cross-training and really creates incredible amount of multi-iterational learning for the organization. Now, one other thing that you want to think about in terms of the dedication. We'll come back to this dedication resource on a few more points that I want to make. But the other point I do want to make as you deploy Lean, it's extremely important to have a growth plan. So as part of your strategic development initiative, growth should be prominently as different initiatives. Because if you are creating a waste elimination approach through a lot of lean tools focused on operations and processes, you're going to be creating capacity. And if employees can't see that you're just as dedicated to growing the organization, it will be very disheartening for them to think about just waste elimination because they won't see as clearly what the future is for them. What if we eliminate 10% of excess work in the department every year and we're only growing at a 2% rate? People are not stupid. They're going to see, how can we sustain this? At what point will people move away from the commitment that they've made to not laying off? And whether, even though in your heart you may know there will be no layoffs and productivity gain, people are used to reading between the lines, and so you must have a growth plan if you're going to have a waste elimination plan. So let's talk a little bit more about, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the sources of workforce development. I mentioned, doing process improvement events and managing for daily improvement as a way to prepare the organization to have the ability to free up people to move them around in the organization. And by the way, in our company, we moved around people, not just the first-line workers. We moved around supervisors, managers, and even vice presidents to where the work is. So again, I would encourage you to think about how do you move people throughout the organization, not just at the worker level. Again, what you do sends loud messages to the organization. I think it's really important when you do have capacity creation coming out of Kaizen events to really think about what I call freeing up the best and brightest. And the reason this is really important are twofold. One is the best and brightest, and please, I hope some of you aren't offended by that term. I'm just trying to draw a picture of what I'm talking about. These are the people that will be more likely to be able to learn how to do work in another area. And by the way, these best and brightest can be from all levels of the hierarchy. It also are the people that, you know, are maybe have more feeling of confidence, that, you know, they have a good place in the organization. It emphasizes to them that they do have a good position in the organization. But it also does something else. If you don't pick the best and brightest, if you pick people that have challenges in performing their existing job, the rest of the organization probably knows that. They probably know who they like to work with and who are people that are top performing. And if you pick people that have performance struggles, then the next time you need to pull somebody, it's going to be seen as punishment or that you're not a good performer. You always want to be recognizing your stars and your high-performing people so that others can see, hey, there's value in being a high-performing person. There's opportunity, and there's something that's worthwhile to really put your heart and soul into your work, and that those people are really being rewarded. One of the serendipitous benefits is that as you implement lean and improvement, you're generally creating a lot more standard work, and in some ways it actually makes it easier for your lower performers to be successful because there's a clearer standard of how the work is to be done. So that helps as well. Another technique that I think is a really good idea in workforce development in your lean enterprise is to use the lean team. Some people call it Kaizen Promotion Office. Some call it your operational excellence team. These are people that you've said, hey, we want you to help the organization learn about lean and implement lean. Use that team of people as a rotation point for development. In fact, maybe you want to even make it in some areas a requirement to take on a leadership position that they have rotated through. And I'm just going to call it Kaizen Promotion Office, but you know what you call it in your company. And use it as a prerequisite for leadership. You're probably not going to be able to flip the switch on that, but make it, get it clear that, hey, we want you to, that when you rotated through this this area, this is our preparation for you in the leadership position. Think of 6 to 18-month rotation. Now, your KPO team, maybe you want it as a mix of people that have been hired from outside who already have experience as lean leaders if you're just starting out. But, you know, try and look at it really as a mix, with most people being the ones that are rotating in and off of this, because there's no better way to learn how to be a to be a leader in a lean organization than to really have to lead lean activities and teach others. My mother was a twin, and she used to always say, the person that did the quizzing learned more than the one that was getting quizzed. And so your ability to teach really will help ingrain these concepts into your understanding and help you see more clearly what your job as a leader in a lean organization is. And I think this has been one of the areas that many companies, as they've been on their lean journey, after a few years, they realize, man, that first level and second level of leadership, you know, we really need to help them know what lean leadership is all about. And this rotation can be a great way to learn it. It should be a very positive move. It should be seen as an achievement, certainly not as corrective action. I would never encourage you to put somebody on the KPO because they need to get better, and because they're struggling in their existing jobs. This should always be a reward, and only for top performers, your future leaders of the organization. Again, this is a strategy of moving people around. Now, there are barriers, however, to moving people around. Some people have personal beliefs that get in the way. You know, I went to school to be an accountant. I went to school to be electrical engineer. I went to school, blah, blah, blah. And so it's hard for people to sometimes see that there's value to them in their career of doing other things. I think maybe another barrier can be that employees don't trust management. What if I move to that other job and I'm really good at this job, but if I move to that other job, maybe I won't be quite as good. And what if management, you know, puts me on a performance plan at this point? Do I trust them to help me make this move? Or just plain out, what if I fail? You know, is it a bad reflection on me? So there's a lot of work to be done to help people see what's possible and structures and policies that you might put in place. For instance, one of the things that we did at our company is we allowed people to have two choices. So if they were freed up and they didn't like the first job option of the job that was presented to them, we would let them have a second option. Now, that was at that point, if they didn't want to do that job, we would consider that, you know, that they really didn't want to work for the company any longer. But that rarely, if ever, I think maybe, I can't even think that it even happened once, maybe one time did that ever happen. Another barrier to moving people around is sometimes managers don't want to free up their best person. You know, this is somebody that they've been relying on, and, you know, they don't really, you know, they're a little concerned by losing that. So sometimes you can also release the best talent by making them the manager and free up the manager to go do another job. There's a lot of different options to think about here. There's also another barrier, which is this sort of backfilling mentality. Wait a minute, if Jane goes and works on that team, I'm going to have to backfill her. Well, no, this is where really constantly every department looking at waste elimination and creating capacity is important. And last of all, sometimes people feel like compensation needs to change immediately as you go and do another job, and that can be a barrier to getting people to move around. So here are some structural ideas that you might, in our last 5 minutes here, that you might think about that might help. First of all, you might create a place. Sometimes as you do Kaizen events, not you know, if you're lucky, frequently, but often it doesn't happen, you can free up people right away after improvement events. And I think it's a great idea to create a cost center where those people's pay can go into. It's still part of the organization. You haven't eliminated the cost, but you can begin to reward the departments that are able to free up people. Also, you can see how much resource the organization is freeing up, and so that management can be sure and be deploying them back into the organization in meaningful areas. I already mentioned the idea of two options to job assignment. Compensation, one of the things that I think makes sense is that you adjust compensation only when the capability has actually been demonstrated. And I think that, that doesn't always happen on the same clock. Sometimes it might take, a quarter to demonstrate. Sometimes it might take shorter or longer. But it does drive you to need to move away necessarily from a normal pay cycle. So if your company has a structure where pay changes are made once a year or once every 18 months, and probably it will make sense that you're going to need to move away from that normal pay cycle for people that are really moved around in jobs so that you can be fair and adjusting pay. Now, the other side can happen on the downside of pay. I think if the person's at the top of the pay scale and you have a red line process that you already use, I think there's certain limits to this. And what I think is really fair is that if someone has moved into a job that's dramatically below their pay level, I think you need to give them a grace period that they can adjust to that new pay level or to find a job that would be more in alignment with their skills. Again, they've not lost their employment, haven't lost their pay, but I think it's a fair compromise between the level of compensation and what the new work that's available. If there's union work, one of the things that I think is very helpful is to expand the work grouping so you're not having as much job bidding as you change the work. I think you should think about zero-based job replenishment, so when somebody leaves the organization, that you don't immediately just repost that job. You need a process to look at where is the most important place for that job to be replaced, or should it be replaced at all. Make sure you move managers as well as employees. And all in all, I think you can tell from these comments that it's very important that human resources strongly engage in order to create this workplace opportunity. If they're not involved in changing policies and working hand in hand, you will definitely be, your efforts to move people around will have many more barriers. So I'd just like to sort of close here with a few thoughts. Organizational development is crucial to achieving your strategic focus. You can use your strategic focus as a way to develop people, continue to have experimentation in your organization, that you have continuous improvement at every local level so that it creates opportunity to move people around, and think about entire total organization engagement. This is not a manufacturing strategy. This is a total enterprise strategy. I added, an 8 ways, as many do, to the 7 ways that we gained from Toyota, really the neglect of human talent, and hopefully you can, from this quick presentation, realize there's so many elements of the neglect of human talent. There's so much talent and genius in our organizations, and that's one of the really fun parts of Lean, is seeing that blossom and come out in all of our people. I'll close with a quote from Nelson Mandela. A leader is like a shepherd. He stays behind the flock, letting the most nimble go out ahead, whereupon others will follow, not realizing that all along they're being directed from behind. So create these opportunities for the nimble to go out ahead so that we can follow. Here's my contact information. If you would like to follow up with me with any questions, I'll be glad to attempt to answer your questions. Email probably is best, to be quite honest, because often during the day I'm available or with other clients. Thank you so much for the opportunity to interact with you.
All right. Well, Jean, thank you for facilitating our session today. As mentioned previously, today's webinar is being recorded, so look for an email following our time together for a link to the recording. Feel free to share this throughout your organization. So again, thank you, Jean, and thanks to each of you for participating in today's session. Goodbye.
Bye.